Hey everybody, Jeff Miller here, head of GRE Instruction and Target Test Prep. In today's video, we are going to talk about GRE scoring and all you need to know about GRE scoring and percentile rankings. So first, let's talk about some basics of GRE scoring that relate to the three sections in the GRE. What we have is the analytical writing section. Remember, there's now one essay. That score goes from 0 to 6 in half-point increments. Then you've got the verbal reasoning section. That ranges from 130 to 170 in 1-point increments, and so does the quantitative reasoning section. Again, that's 130 to 170 in 1-point increments. Now, a lot of times you'll see that they'll add together the possible verbal score and possible quant score. So those sums range from 260 to 340, but remember, there's no official percentile rankings on that total score. So usually what schools do is they'll just look at the percentile based on your verbal, look at the percentile based on your quant, and then just look at the overall score between the verbal and quant when summed together. So now you may be wondering, how are the percentiles actually calculated? So here's what the GRE does. They take the scoring data from each of the previous 3 years to calculate or determine these percentiles. Now, each testing year runs from July 1 from 1 year through June 30th of the next year. So to calculate it, they're taking the scores that are below the score in question, and then they assign a percentage, which is then obviously a percentile to that score. So let's say right now, a verbal 159 scores in the 81st percentile. So if you score a 159, what does it mean? Well, it means that that score of 159 is higher than 81% of all of the GRE test takers' verbal scores. Of course, we mean from the previous 3 years in question. And then, of course, each year, the oldest year gets tacked off, the new year gets tacked on, and then they redefine those percentile rankings. Now, the million-dollar question is, how do schools use these percentiles? Well, it's interesting. It definitely differs from admissions committee to admissions committee. Look, some schools just look at your raw scores, your raw math score, your raw verbal score. Others will look at your raw math and raw verbal and the sum of those. So what you have to do is, if you're unsure, well, you can look at what the median and the average scores look like, but you can also take a look at what they're saying. What are admissions saying? Do you have to hit a minimum criteria for, say, a certain quant percentile? Do you have to hit a minimum criteria for, say, a verbal percentile? Or again, do they just care about the sum of your quant and verbal scores? And remember, if they're trying to say that you need to hit an overall percentile on the sum of those scores, reach out to admissions, because they should know that there is no actual percentile. Yes, you can estimate it, but there's not a technical percentile that ETS is going to give you. So the bottom line is, schools do use these percentiles in different ways, but reach out to them to be certain of what you should be doing personally prior to submitting your GRE score. Finally, you might be wondering in cases, why did my percentile change? Well, going back to something I said at the beginning of the video, percentiles can change because they're based on the previous 3 years. So when the end of the testing year is over, the scores from the 3 years prior, those will drop, and then they'll use the new testing score. So every year, there's going to be a slight adjustment. Now, if you took the GRE and you're saving it and applying for graduate school or an MBA a couple years down the line, and you see that percentile changing, well, first of all, see if it matters. Are admissions going to look at that percentile, or are they going to look at your raw score? And if you're concerned, just reach out to them and see if there's anything that they can do, or if it really is going to matter or affect your chances of getting in. I know this can happen when some admissions committees say that you need to get a minimum average percentile, but again, people are reasonable. If percentiles change and your score is in the books, see what they can do for you. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Again, the bottom line is, you study hard, you take the GRE, and you do the best you can possibly do, and let everything else kind of fall into place as it should. I had a blast today talking about the GRE scoring percentiles. I hope you learned a lot from this video, and as always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly, or if you have any comments or thoughts on future videos, please leave them in the comments, and of course, subscribe to see more of what's coming down the pipeline. Happy studying, everybody, and I'll see you all soon.